Hey, it's Jer, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for the 22nd of December, 2020. We're recording this on a Tuesday, and today we talk about a way to bring the film and television industry back to Michigan. Brian Kelly from MIFIA, the Michigan Film Industry Association, joins me to talk about their ideas to jumpstart the jobs and prestige connected to all of this in the Great Lakes State. But first, a thanks to our members. Without you, this daily show literally would not be possible. You can join our fine folks at patreon.com/dailydetroit. We have options from $1 a month up to those who, well, will think your business and talk about you on the air. Hey, isn't it nice? Anyway, that's on patreon.com/dailydetroit. All right, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's just jump right in. Joining me on the line is the co-chair of MIFIA, the Michigan Film Industry Association, Brian Kelly. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
How are you doing this morning, Jer?
I am doing excellent, and I am looking forward to talking to you because this is a topic, film incentives in Michigan, that is contentious but important to a lot of people. We've been through this path a little bit over the last, 20 years in different forms, but it's something that a lot of people, frankly, miss having films around, miss having those kinds of job opportunities, but there was a lot of controversy with the programs that were offered before. So before we get into all this, let's set the table with what is MIFIA and why do you all exist?
So MIFIA is essentially a trade advocacy group that was created to fill the gap between the actual film industry itself and the people that actually are in the state. So the former legislation didn't really have anybody that was in this position that could advocate for it. So it left a vacuum, and a lot of bad blood happened with that particular time period. We want to bridge that gap and make a coalition between people that are stakeholders in the state regarding film tax credits, meaning businesses, people that work here, creatives, and students wanting to get up into this career industry.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, in a way, the idea of tax credits and incentives for the film industry is good in your view. However, the execution on the previous plan was lacking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fundamentals of the old legislation were rough at best. And I think we would all, in MIFIA in general, but in moving forward, we would basically like to say, let's burn down the whole idea of the old legislation down to the ground, and let's start new. We want a fiscally responsible bill, something that we can grow small and work up towards. We want it to be smart, and we want it to benefit Michigan taxpayers most of all. So we're willing to talk to almost anybody. If you have ideas about what this bill should entail, let us know. I mean, Republican, Democrats, conservative, liberal, moderates, please let me know. I'm open to anything.
Well, and that's good to hear about that, bipartisanship, especially when it comes to getting Michiganders to work. So before we get into what the future could look like, what was fundamentally wrong for the people who don't remember? I remember covering some of it, and to me, the old legislation had an issue that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way and also made things fiscally difficult for the state because It was a cash rebate, which is very different than the kind of incentives that you usually see. I think a lot of people think that all incentives are basically a check. They're usually not. They're usually not a check. But in this case, it was. And from my reporting, remembering back in the day, it made budgets really wobbly when at the end of the year came.
Yes. And you can't blame the state for being a little leery when it comes to balancing their books every year. That is why we've created making this more of a film tax credit, which is the model that is followed by Illinois, Pennsylvania, and in Georgia. So we try to model ourselves, actually, the smaller states that we'd be competing with, which is Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and obviously Georgia. And we wanted to put ourselves on a level playing field with them as well.
Why are incentives important to the film industry? Why are they necessary? And what is the national situation with incentives? How many states, how many incentives are out there?
Over 30 states have some sort of an incentive program, whether it's rebate, tax credit, or some other form of mechanism funding them. But we feel that Michigan is due. If there are over 30 states, and not only conservative states but liberal states, we feel that even states like Texas and Missouri, newly formed incentives in Missouri, why can't Michigan?
All right. Well, then what are we looking at as far as industry size? How many people are sitting idle? How much more money do you think we could bring in over time if we reactivate a tax credit program?
Well, that's to be scaled up slowly. So, but our plan is to have a 10-year time frame where we would like to increase it over 3-year increments. So we're looking at the first set of 3 years, 50 million, second set of 3 years, 75, and the last 400. We also have a commercial component, which is built into it, which comes out of a separate pot, and it will incentivize shooting commercials here again. As you know, most commercials are shot on the coasts and elsewhere, and in Georgia as well. But we would like to bring some of that business back as well.
Well, and Michigan is such a large state as far as land area with varied scenery. I mean, the easiest one to think of is the car commercials, right? They spend so much on advertising.
Correct.
It would be great if all of that money and production money stayed right here in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
How has it been over the last few years? I mean, I know you're a working professional in the business. How has it been for you and your colleagues? And pandemic aside, what have been the challenges in the last few years?
Well, none of us knew how to write a bill, first off. We're just a bunch of local guys, as you said. Our learning curve was steep, but one of the benefits of COVID was all the downtime and actually tweaking the bill, revising it, and making it probably the best competitive bill in the country right now. Pound for pound, we were working with other sort of consultants and people outside the industry that had their opinions as well. We took everybody's into account, and then we kind of fine-pointed everything to where we are now, which is great, and we couldn't be happier. We've accustomed ourselves with other groups, and we hope to move forward in 2021 with them.
So what is the state of play right now? Do you have a sponsor? What are you looking forward to accomplishing in 2021, and what does this kind of look like?
Okay, so we were lucky enough to reach out a couple of years ago to Robert Wittenberg. Representative Wittenberg is in my district, Ferndale. He was gracious enough to get behind our bill, our legislation, and got us to introduce just a few weeks ago. He's a tremendous public servant who deserves everything he gets. I'm excited that he's actually going to be Oakland County Treasurer. That being said, moving into the next year, we are looking for new sponsorship. So we have reached out to Senator Adam Ollier out of Detroit, and he seems to have picked up the sword for us. So we look forward to working with him and having him work to get this thing across the finish line for us.
So in this early stage, I know that things are still coming together, but what are kind of the tent poles of this on the table?
Well, the bullet points we're looking at is it's basically a two-tiered system that covers both commercials and industrials and also features. It's a transferable tax credit, but it's non-refundable, which means you can't just get your credit and then say, I want to cash out without actually doing your project. Like I said, the 50, 75, 100. There is a $300 million minimum spend for features. There's a $50,000 minimum spend for commercials. We're looking at, there is probably a residency requirement we're looking at. And we're also trying to close the major problem with the old legislation, which was pass-throughs. Businesses that came into the state, being out of state and just setting up an office and running gear or camera gear or whatever through their small office and saying that they are a local business. We have language built into the legislation that kind of closes that.
Well, that's interesting to me, especially considering, and I understand you listen to the show, so you may remember this one. When I talked to Councilman James Tate about the marijuana ordinances, that kind of living in the city or being from the city was very important to him. And I feel like a lesson learned when it comes to these programs going forward. Are you saying you might see something like that when it comes to a statewide basis, saying, all right, well, you need to really be a statewide business, not just like a shell that set up an office in, a P.O. box somewhere?
Yeah, it gets tricky. This was one of the things we learned as we went along. It's tricky writing language like that because you don't want to seem discriminatory, and we were told that by the Legislative Services Bureau. They're the bureau that actually writes the bill for you. So we had to actually come up with parameters. You have to be a Michigan business. You have to actually have a physical address. You actually have to have one full-time employee. You actually have to have some sort of an inventory that you carry. You have to have some sort of structure in how you run your business. So obviously those things could help, they could hurt, but we wanted to be able to make these companies reliant on actually setting up shop and creating roots in the state.
And for the uninitiated, that $50,000 kind of threshold in the commercial space, that's something that is pretty commonly hit, right? Like I remember that from my old corporate days, that's something that's pretty hit. But I'm thinking about listeners who have never been part of a commercial shoot before.
Yes, we looked across the board. We necessarily didn't want to give it out to large agencies that would soak up the budget right away. Like, you create a kitty of money and then they say, okay, we're going to do our entire campaign with everything that Michigan has to offer for an entire calendar year. We wanted to make it small enough that smaller production companies and smaller agencies could get in there and actually capitalize on this. We also have a quick turnaround time. I believe it is a 48-hour window of approval. Who knows in implementation if that's going to work or not, but we're very much in favor of that.
Well, from my previous communications life, I have learned that quick approval, and I don't know if 48 hours or 72 hours or whatever is the right thing, but I do know that often a quick approval is important because these corporate decision makers, well, if you don't move, they sometimes take their money elsewhere.
Absolutely. They'll be gone. So that was one of the key things with Illinois' their bill. It has a quick turnaround, and they're able to pump out getting a production company in and out with their voucher almost like in a day. So
wow, that is a pretty efficient process. I mean, I'm
yes.
somebody who, I believe that government has a role and can be pretty powerful, but for any government agency to turn that around, that's impressive.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure you have some listeners that say, no, that's not true. But, we're the people I talk to say it's, that process is pretty quick compared to other states.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think some listeners may not realize about other states. Like when I interview reporters or talk to reporters on background in places like Ohio, you think about things like car insurance. It's absurd how different the two states are. I'm not the biggest Ohio fanboy, but you go south of that border, your car insurance is going down by half or 2/3, and they just exist and they're fine down there. Like it's something
right.
that I think people don't realize. Since we are such a big state, and this is part of why it makes it good for us to shoot things because we have such varied terrain. I mean, I think you and I both know there's dunes, there's vineyards, there's, hills, there's all kinds of, there's beautiful water scenes, things like that. So many things that can be done here in Michigan.
Yeah. And in fact, when production companies come in, and I'll use the Steven Soderbergh picture, No Sudden Move, that came in over these past few months, they love Detroit. Steven Soderbergh loves Detroit. He was here for Out of Sight back in, I believe, 98 or 99 with George Clooney and J-Lo. He loves the city. I mean, he loves everything about it. He loves shooting here. The people, they mostly love our workforce. We're hardworking folk. We're pretty down to earth. We show up on time and we give everything we got. So people here will work with you business-wise. They just love the ethic of the Midwest. People in Michigan don't realize what a untapped gem the state actually is. And they get here and you get guys like John Hamm. They go on Jimmy Fallon and preaches the gospel of the Lafayette Coney Island hot dog.
The Lafayette is the right choice, by the way, for me. Although I am a Dooley's guy. If you're going to pick one of the two, I'm a Lafayette guy.
No, I'm a Lafayette guy myself. I've had Dooley's, but I got to say Lafayette's the only one.
Well, you mentioned stars really quick, and you mentioned well-known names. We've talked about the workers and the impact there, and I know this is more of a softer angle, but how important is it for Michiganders, Metro Detroiters, to have people who get a lot of attention, on our streets, shopping our stores. I mean, I remember the big deal with seeing Renee Zellweger, at a Grosse Pointe Kroger, like all kinds of like crazy sightings like that. One of our engineers in his day job, he saw somebody like in the lobby of the Rensen. Like it just made his day. It was something that it's got like an undefined quality for people, I think.
I think so too. I mean, also I feel like, stars and even producers, high up producers and directors like Steven Soderbergh can walk around and nobody's really going to give them any problems. They're, all in all, us as Detroiters and Midwesterners, I think we're pretty respectful of they're real people. They got to get things done, and they really don't need that much attention. But it would be nice, it's nice to see that they're around, and it's nice that they're here and they're shining attention on our beautiful city.
Well, Brian, before I let you go, how is it that people can get involved? Let's say they've heard you talk and they say, hey, I want to get behind this, or they're working in the biz and they want to get behind this, or they want to be working again in the business. I know so many people who were caterers and things like that who really benefited from the situation at hand and had a lot of work with the incentives before. If they want to get involved, what can they do?
Well, there's a couple things you can do. You can contact your House and Senate leaders and ask them, hey, what is your position on film tax credits in general? Use the term film tax credit. Don't necessarily use film incentive. For some reason, it's a hot button. But if you ask what is their position on it, and would there be any reason to bring it back, and we would love to see it back. Also, on the MIFIA website, which is at www.mifia.org, we have a PSA that you can pass around, that you can copy and paste on people's Instagram and people's Facebook. And you can also donate to MIFIA. We are obviously a nonprofit that is looking to expand our reach, but that's not done for free. So we have a marketing company that's actually providing advocacy and access to legislators, and they also run our day-to-day operations, which is getting out the word, communications, meetings, and fundraiser. So if you have, and also fundraising, if you have any sort of background in fundraising that you feel that you could help, please let us know on either our Facebook page or websites. Would be great.
Well, that's the challenge with grassroots organizations, right? Like people want them to succeed, but I can tell you from personal experience, from talking to lawmakers over the years, it takes, there's a saying that like it takes money to keep Gandhi poor. And it's because it takes money to get these things out there. And grassroots organizations can often make money go much farther than some other stuff, but it takes dollars. It takes time. I mean, I got to think that you've spent a lot of hours trying to rally the troops on this one.
Yes. I mean, we're all volunteers on this thing, but we have a company named Edge Marketing out of Lansing, and they're working for pennies on the dollar just to get us, get this known. So we would love and appreciate any sort of donation. I think there's a donation button on the website. Please feel free to smash that as much as possible. I know times are tight, but I totally agree. But we could use the support.
We're YouTubers now. Smash that donate button, right? Smash that like button.
That's how the young say it, I think.
Right, the youngs. Oh, to be the youngs again. Anyway.
Me too.
Right? Well, Brian Kelly, Michigan Film Industry Association, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope people learn something from this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your listeners. If they could do anything to help, it would be highly appreciated.
And that's all for today. We've got a couple more episodes until Christmas. For Christmas Eve, in fact, the team is going to get around the virtual fire and talk about the year. So if you've got any questions, thoughts, want to know what we think about things, well, hit me up, jer@dailydetroit.com, or leave a voicemail at 313-789-3211. That's 313-789-3211. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.